Morning. If my computer says it's 11 o'clock, we're going to start our session. I see people are still signing on. Most of you, I see, have your microphones muted. That's at your discretion. Certainly if you're afraid of any background noises, it would be the best thing to keep your microphones muted. But it is a give and take session, at least to a certain degree, and certainly there'll be time to ask questions. I encourage questions and even have some questions that I'm looking for responses. So just unmute your microphone if you would like to share a response or add a question or comment. Andrea did email out yesterday with the reminder or for the workshop today that you could click on the handout. So you could be doing that simultaneously. I believe on your electronic device. Maybe you've printed it out. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you want to afterwards. I will be following more or less the same outline. Mine that I prepared for myself might be a drop difference, so you can, ask me if you're looking for the place. You can ask me to help you. If you want to look at the outline, you're welcome to make notes, obviously, on the outline, whether it's with a pen or somehow electronically on your device, if you have that capability.
Where are the outlines?
On the original flyer, I think it says there are two different links. One is for the handout and one is for a Haggadah, courtesy of Maxwell House, their entire Maxwell House standard Haggadah. I think I grew up on those Haggadahs.
Where were those handouts?
You have to go, I think maybe even if you go to this morning's email of a reminder, one sec, we have a new component to today's presentation that was not on the original flyer. And that is, okay. I was able to engage the services of Barbara Yazger to give some suggestions for quick and easy ways of cooking for Pesach.
Okay, I hear you.
Now I'm just looking, let's see. Okay, let's see. I'm going to today's email. Let's just see today's email. No. Okay. Oh yeah. At the bottom of today's email, there is a tab that says printable handouts, and underneath that is printable Haggadah. I don't think you want to print the Haggadah right now because it's not short. But again, you could bring it to your screen and follow if you want. If you have a Haggadah nearby.
I have one.
Yeah. Just saying, for all that are on, if you have a Haggadah nearby, it would be helpful. In fact, I want to ask that question in a moment, except I have to figure out how I get back to my screen now.
Hi, can you hear me? It's
I hear you, but
yes, I have a lot of Haggadahs, like 20 of them. If anybody needs Haggadahs, I've always collected them over the years. The Maxwell House, the Birnbaum, whatever. So if anybody needs it, just get in touch with me. Okay?
Okay. Andrea, by any chance, are you on the line right now? No. Okay. I have to call into the office for a moment because I lost my visual.
Well, you're doing fine. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to disconnect, mute myself.
That's okay.
Your picture is on here now.
Well, I'm going to go.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to get I'm going to go back to my email and get the other thing first and come back.
Yeah, it's 17 pages. I have it. I did it already.
Okay. So I'll just tell you, there are multiple parts to the handout. The first is an outline of what we will be covering. The second, at the end of that, are 2 pages that are been copied from the OU Pesach booklet about measurements for the Seder, which we'll be talking about. And then there's a section that we're not going to deal with today, but has several brief divrei Torah on the Haggadah taken from the original publication of the SOY, the Pesach Haggadah, that might add to your Seder experience. And, okay, let's just see.
So, I'm gonna get the print on, I'll be back.
Whatever you want.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Not sure. I may have lost my status as the host in what just happened, but I'm here. Okay. So, you know,
You're the
many
main
of us,
now.
it's like there's a chance that all of us have had Pesach plans changed. Whether we always planned to be here in Century Village, but we changed our Seder arrangements, or whether we weren't supposed to be in Century Village, and now we are in Century Village. Maybe some people are even in a different state than we are right now, but probably most of us have had changes in our plans. For some people, those changes or the thought of the changes are pretty significant. And the reason that I crafted this workshop was because in order to help people keep Seder groups small, the advisors as small as possible. So I thought that this workshop might help people feel more comfortable in hosting their own very small Seder. Now, so let me ask you, before we get started, I want to ask actually two questions. Number one, just very, very, very technical and a brief answer. If you have a Haggadah with you, could you please say yes? Oh, okay, yeah, shake it. I don't see everybody on, but right, most of you are muted.
Yes.
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 Okay, very good. Second, and this is a real question. If you have a specific goal that you would like to accomplish in this session today, can you please in orderly fashion share it with me? Anybody? Going once. Okay, fine. Then you're stuck with my preferences. So let me ask you this question. What are the goals of the Seder? And you can look at your outline because I did list three major goals of the Seder. That's number one, is to tell the story. That's what Haggadah means. Higgadah lebincha, you shall tell your child. So you have to tell the story. But it's not just any telling of the story. You know, you have to feel the story. We have to be inquisitive. We have to ask questions. We stimulate questions. Our oldest daughter, when she was, Barbara might be able to help me, when she was maybe 4 years old, at the Seder, as we'll come to in our outline, but more briefly now, there are times that we do things at the Seder table. Sometimes they're, strict halacha. Sometimes they're symbolic, and sometimes they're designed to prompt questions, especially of children who, maybe many of us would have had children if the circumstances weren't the same with the virus. But there is a big focus in the typical family setting on stimulating the child to think. So early in the Seder, right before the Manishtana, not coincidental. We've already said Kiddush, and then one is supposed to remove the Seder plate from the table. Now, some Seder plates have the matzahs on top of them, so you're removing a lot of stuff when you remove the Seder plate. And as I took the Seder plate off the table, my daughter turned to Barbara and chuckled and said, "Abba's kidding." In other words, how could you take food off the table when we haven't even started eating. And that's exactly, what that was meant for. Now, of course, our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren are so well educated today that when they see things happening at the Seder, they're not so surprised because they had model Seders and the teachers taught them all different things to do. But it's wonderful when you could still prompt somebody to ask a question. So we have to feel that story. Number two, we have to eat the story. Eating the designated foods, the halachically required foods of the Seder, is part of telling the story without words. And the third key element of the Seder is Hakarat HaTov, thanksgiving to Hashem for all that Hashem has done for us. Yes, the Exodus from Egypt, and even before. We have references in the Haggadah before the Exodus. And we have references to ongoing Geulah, redemption that Hashem has helped us experience with his blessings throughout Jewish history. Something that we're looking forward right to immediately in the health crisis around the world, and with a more extended view to see the Jewish people strong in our country with a rebuilt Beit HaMikdash and having peace throughout the world. But we thank Hashem for what we have experienced today. So those are the three key elements. Some, especially within the Sephardic tradition, not only tell the story and eat the story, but they also act out parts of the story. Now, to accomplish the goals of the Seder, we start out with an agenda. Kadesh, Orchatz, etc. There are 15 steps. This list, so traditional for all of us to recite and usually to sing at the start of the Seder, this list helps to put things together. In other words, the Seder is one unified experience. It's not different segments. It's not that, we have to read the Haggadah. Then we get to eat our regular Yontif meal. And 3, there's some singing afterwards, benching and other singing. These are not disjointed experiences. It's one long experience, to the degree that in the Rav Chaim Soloveitchik of Brisk, during dinner, when they spoke, they would only speak about things connected to the Haggadah, to the story of the Exodus. No other discussion, because it's all part of the Seder, and everything should be Seder. You have a little comment on your outline, if you have it, not crucial, from some thoughts from Steve Lippman about understanding the Seder together. Let's talk about the Seder plate. The first 3 items, they get the top billing, top position, the shank bone, which reminds us of the Korban Pesach, which we do not have. And truthfully, like the only roasted things that we should be having at our Seder are maybe the shank bone, and the minhag is to roast the egg a little bit. So you have a little, browning on the egg. So we have the shank bone, we have the egg. The egg it represents the chagiga korban, the offering that was brought on in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple, on the holidays. And we have the maror, the bitter herb. Those 3, have to do with the, 2 of the 3 we don't have today. We don't have the Paschal lamb today, but we have a reminder of it on the Seder plate. We don't have the holiday korban, the chagiga, but we have a reminder. And the bitter herb is not in the same context, but that we have. And then we have, auxiliary 2 items, the charoset, that sweet mixture of nuts and fruits, wine, grape juice, etc., which is meant to remind us of the mortar that our ancestors were forced to make in Egypt. And we have a place for the vegetable, for the karpas, that we're going to use to dip into the salt water. Then we need the 3 matzahs. Now, there is a strong preference for shmura matzah, whether it be handmade shmura matzah or machine-made shmura matzah. There are authorities, not necessarily in the same number, but there are authorities on both sides of the discussion, which is better, handmade shmura matzah or machine-made shmura matzah. But whenever possible, someone should try to have shmura matzah at the Seder, for the mitzvahs of matzah at the Seder. But every yontiv, as we do on Shabbos, every yontiv and Shabbos, we make kiddush. Normally, when we make a kiddush, only one person has to recite the kiddush. And truthfully, that part is true at the Seder as well, and may be advisable for 2 reasons. Believe that I'll come back to those. But on a Shabbos or a Yontiv, the truth is that only one person has to drink the wine of the Kiddush. Our custom is that we usually, pour off, keep things germ-free, got to keep health very, very dominant in what we do at the Seder as well. So, normally we either pass wine around or grape juice, or people have taken another beverage, the specific type of wine that might be on the table, and they drink that. And maybe some people don't drink at all. And that is fine. On a regular Shabbos or Yontiv, one person is making Kiddush, and say that person drinks the wine, or if even a different person drinks the wine, everybody around the table has fulfilled his or her obligation to recite Kiddush. But that is not enough at the Seders. At the Seders, everyone who is above bar mitzvah age, and if there are any exceptions to that listening on, could you identify yourself now? Okay, sometimes we've had some younger children on the programs also. But so we each have an obligation. We don't have to recite the Kiddush. And the reasons not for everybody to recite the Kiddush is that, it only adds to the time of the Seder. And the truth is that if anybody's having any kind of guest, if you're having a Seder with someone who is, is not your spouse, someone that you're not with all the time, you want that Seder really to go as fast as possible to help minimize any possibility of transferring of any kind of virus. The other reason for having one person lead, also debated, but the Mishnah Berurah in general sides with the concept of Rov Am Hadras Melech, when we have an opportunity to do a mitzvah with a larger group, and we all join together in the same act, but that has great merit and enhances the glory of Hashem. Okay. So one person, let's say, makes the Kiddush at the Seder, but everybody has to drink. Now, people may have some, if there are health precautions, I'll try to address health precautions in a subsequent email, whether it's concerns for people who are managing diabetes, or whether there are other concerns. I can help you address those concerns, but there is an obligation, to somehow fulfill within maintaining one's good health, to fulfill the drinking of the wine. The Kiddush is not just the Kiddush at the Seder. That Kiddush is the first of the 4 cups of wine. Now, because of that, all the mitzvahs of the Seder need to be done at the time that we were originally obligated to eat the matzahs with the maror and with the korban pesach, and that is at night. Why is this specifically a nighttime mitzvah. The truth is that usually holidays see more of a demonstration during the daytime. Like on, say, Sukkot, the Lulav and Esrog only during the daytime. But why is it that we are limited to only nighttime? Because that's when the miracle happened. The miracle happened that night, and the real miracle was when Paro said just after midnight, Kumu tsu'u, get up and leave. I can't take it anymore. God is right. God is powerful. Get out of my country. Of course, Moshe said, we're not leaving like thieves. We'll leave in the morning. That was Hashem's plan. So this is a nighttime experience. It's also a time when the Jews, Moshe knew what was happening, but nobody else knew what was happening in the human population. We were told to dress as if we were traveling. I don't know what was in people's mindset at the time, but nighttime is also a sign of difficulty. We're not as secure at night. We can't see things that are around us. We don't know if somebody's lurking in the background. We're not as secure. And as the Chafetz Chaim and others have said, is when you think things are the darkest, that's exactly when Geula, redemption, resolution can happen. So that is a key message of Pesach, and we hope that we'll see that manifested to our very own needs with world health as well, that there should be a sudden resolution to what is standing, in front of us on a very regular basis. But we are optimistic. So the Kiddush, since it is the first of the 4 cups, the Kiddush must be said after Tzeit HaKochavim, the time that the stars come out. That all the times will be listed, B'li Neder, in next week's bulletin. One can start the Kadesh or Chatz, a minute or two beforehand, because that's not obligatory, per se, part of the Seder. But again, on Sukkot, we also don't start early. Shavuos, different customs. But Shabbos is, we want to start early. There's a mitzvah to add to the sanctity of Shabbos. And certainly this time of the year, most of us are starting Shabbos early. You can't do that for Pesach. Pesach has to wait. And on the second night, we have to wait until the first day is over before we do any preparations for the second Seder. The other item of Kiddush is that Kiddush, as well as the eating of the matzah, the eating of the sandwich, the korech, that we are supposed to recline. Men are specifically directed and required to recline. For women, it's optional. When one does recline, the definition of reclining is having the weight of our left side, regardless if one is righty or lefty. The physiology of the body the anatomy of the body is such that if one would recline on the right side, they have a greater chance of choking. We don't want anybody getting into trouble from doing a mitzvah. So the reclining by definition is on the left side, not just leaning over like this, but supporting your left side. So that means, having a chair that is not too high, that you can turn or turning around in your chair no matter how high it is, and leaning your body against it, maybe putting your hand over, why did my screen change? I don't know. Your hand over, excuse me, I'm just trying to, am I still on? No, I don't hear anything.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Well, who is it? No. Magic check open. Okay. Okay, anyhow. So, it has to say to support the left side. At least if you don't get it that way.
Rabbi, sound is something.
The way we have things set up, thank you, somebody else, somebody else help me get back on, thank you. It's okay. I don't, yeah, okay. Whoops. Okay, I'm not pressing any more buttons here. Believe me, don't worry, don't. Okay, I needed that. I don't need that. I don't need that.
That's better.
Okay, good. Okay, no problem. I guess I get to see a lot of people. That's nice. Okay, so Reb Soloveitchik at a yahrzeit here. Once the other Rav gave a very, very widely attended, the time that like 1,200 people, there weren't so many auditorium spaces that could hold that many people. He gave a yahrzeit shiur in honor of his mother and wife's yahrzeit. So Rav Soloveitchik, I forget the context of this particular shiur.
Maybe you're covering the speaker.
No, I don't think so, but maybe I have too many things open, so I will try to close some more windows on my computer. So, okay, am I being heard any better now?
Yeah,
Yes.
little
Okay.
static.
A little static?
Yeah, it's a little bit, but it's much better than before.
Sorry, I'm not
It's better than before.
I'm not sure what I can do about that right now.
It's okay. It's tolerable.
Oh, okay, thank you. So Rav Soloveitchik said is that if Jews had the tree that some use at the end of December as part of their celebration, that if Jews had such a tree, and maybe that yahrzeit shiur was the source of some of this Purim Torah that goes around and now goes around for all different holidays. But Rav Soloveitchik said if we had a tree for part of our holiday, there would be halachas, the minimum height of the tree, maybe maximum height of the tree, how green it would have to be, what happens if leaves fall off. We know it's halachas like in the lieu of an esrog. So we measure things. Mitzvahs are often defined in very quantitative, not chesed per se, although it's tzedakah, there are measurements also that we have to do when it comes to eating, or our tefillin straps have to be a certain dimension. So we have to do the right amount. So our cups should hold at least 3 ounces, should have a capacity of 3 ounces. A little bit more would be better. When you see the shiur, I think I wrote it on your handouts too, but if you take a look at this page in the OU booklet, which is what was attached to the announcement and reminder of this shiur, but you can find it on page 14 of this year's OU's Pesach booklet. It gives you 3 different views of measurements. Rav Moshe Feinstein held that one's Kiddush cup should be at least 3.3 ounces, but at the very least, 3 ounces. And why that's important is because there is a concept on Pesach to drink rov kos, to drink the majority of the cup. We always have a requirement to drink a malo lugmav, a cheekful. And if you just take a little sip of wine, that's not a halachic fulfillment. When you want to taste something, and you just want to taste a little bit, we make a bracha, and we could taste a little bit, and that's fine. And if we ate or drank not enough, we don't make a bracha achron, and we don't make a bracha afterwards. But when we have a mitzvah to fulfill, we have to drink a minimum quantity, which is, let's say, an ounce plus, an ounce and a half of that liquid. So, sometimes, especially when we get up to the 3rd and 4th cups and it's getting late at night, or we already had alcohol, and so our head is spinning a little bit, and we're tired, and people just take a sip from the cup, that's not fulfilling the mitzvah of the kosot. There's a preference to drink the majority of the cup. So the bigger the cup that we use, the more we have to drink. So just keep that in mind when we select what cup to use for our kiddush cups, for the Seder. Once we drink the minimum amount that we're supposed to drink, we can add to that cup. We can take wine, add to it, and it refreshes the cup, and it's ready to use for the next the cup of wine. There is a preference to use red wine at the Seder, but if that doesn't work for somebody, let's say if they're allergic for some reason to red wines, or they have a better tasting, better quality white wine, you can use other wines. So when you have a better quality wine, you should use the better quality wine because that's a greater honor. But there is this minhag reminds us of the opening plague, the minhag of using the red wine, but it's not absolute. Okay, if you're following in our outlines,
Grape juice.
what's that?
Grape juice, for those that need it.
Yes, so if there are medical reasons or someone is not comfortable drinking wine, then they may use grape juice. Both of those can be diluted in different proportions. Really, never try to email information about that. It may well be part of the diabetic email that hopefully will come out, but maybe in another context as well. Each of the 4 cups of the Seder, and is associated with a part of the Seder. We begin with the Kiddush Hayom, sanctifying the day. We pour the second cup in, for the beginning of the Haggadah. We bench on the 3rd cup of wine, which, was a very widespread tradition for a long time. Now we usually, see it fulfilled in settings where there's a minyan or more. In our own shul, we see it with Shalosh Shudas, and at other times that we may have wine, like if we have a Shabbos meal together, the one who benching, and we use a cup of wine in that setting. So it is an institution, and it is definitely one that's done at the Seder, regardless of how many people that we have, and that's the 3rd cup of wine. And the 4th cup of wine brings us to the conclusion of the praises of Hashem, which are greater than we recited at the beginning of the Seder. So often the Seder starts to break down, as once the meal is over, but a crucial part of the Seder is still left after the meal, when we have to give real expressive and joyous thankfulness to Hashem for his blessings and for the miracles that we have benefited from throughout Jewish history. Kos Eliyahu, I'll come back to that later, believe neder. I think we know that we do 2 different hand washings for the Seder. The biggest trick in the first one is not to fall into a rote habit and not to make the bracha on the first washing of the hands, because we're not ready for hamotzi yet. We're just doing the dipping of the vegetable. And we're going to make a bori pri hadama, the bracha of bori pri hadama, on something that's growing from the ground. Usually, we do, parsley or potato are the 2 most common of what we use for that vegetable. But the entire dipping, we dip it into salt water, which reminds us of the tears of our forefathers and foremothers. It reminds us of the slavery. So that is a dipping. When we say that bracha borei pri hadama, we should also have in mind that it covers the maror that we're going to eat later on. Even though it comes after the hamotzi, the maror is only there after hamotzi because we're told to eat maror. It's not really part of the meal per se. So we should have in mind that we make the borei pri hadama bracha on that potato or on the parsley, that we keep in mind later on, and preferably not to eat too much at that point. Breaking the matzah. Now here we have to depart a little bit from our tradition. When we are at the Seder, if we have any guests at our Seder. My recommendation is that we are very careful not to touch food that is going to go into the mouth of another person. Normally, even on our Shabbos table, a person makes a motzi, and he or she, as the case may be, is dividing up the challah and passing it around. We should not be doing any of that. Not the Shabbos, not during the week, and not at the Seder. We have to be extra cautious about it. So the set of 3 matzahs should be reserved only for the Seder leader. And there should be other matzahs that are around for other people to take. And, with matzah, I guess we have to figure out how we actually make that work. Other things are easy with, with a fork or a spoon. For many things, maybe there should be a designated server, so they have one clean piece of serving utensil that only they are doing it. When there are guests, I think we need to take those precautions to help keep everybody safe. And that is the reason that I'm also recommending, I'm not original in this, that there is a recommendation that we proceed with the Seder maybe at a faster pace than normal in order, again, to limit the time that we might be in proximity to people who we're not usually with on a regular basis. So the breaking of the matzah, so the person who has that set of 3 in front of him or her is going to break that matzah, those matzahs that are being touched then should be reserved for that person. Now we break the matzah in half because on the one hand it reminds us of our poverty, of our slavery. But as Rav Soloveitchik has discussed about the Pesach Seder, beginning from our beginning call of Halakmanya, where we invite, people to come in, which not so serious about this year in too great of a number, but in general, what we walk away with from the Egyptian experience is to be responsible for other people. As Rav Soloveitchik stated and wrote, is that a slave does not have the mental capacity to be worrying about other people. And only a free person can worry about others and share with others. A slave doesn't even have property rights. But as free people, we can worry about others, be concerned about others, and we could share about others. And breaking that matzah and putting a piece aside is a demonstration of our, setting something aside for other people as well. Now, we're up to number 11 on the outline. Well, almost perfect timing, I think. We'll see. Magid, telling the story. Now, if you're telling a story, you want to make sure that the person to whom you're telling the story can understand what you're saying. So you have to pick a language, whether it be a sign language, like it always baffles me. Thank you, Barbara. Well, it always baffles me why the people of the Tower of Babel couldn't finish their project. After all Hashem did was mix up their languages, but they had already started on the project. They did the agenda. They knew what they're supposed to do. So why couldn't they go ahead? So there wasn't unity with them. So there are other ways of communicating, but in practical sense, at the Seder, we're telling the story through the Haggadah. If we're reading the Haggadah in Hebrew and we or people around our table don't understand what we are saying, we are depriving some people from really fulfilling the mitzvah of telling and hearing the story. So, at the very least, if you have people who don't know Hebrew, you should have Hebrew and English Haggadahs available so people can, follow through. But it is 100% okay to read the Haggadah in English, certainly parts of the Haggadah. We know we're going to come to Ramban Gamliel said that anybody who hasn't, said these 3 things, Pesach, Matzah, and Maror, hasn't fulfilled obligation. But that's not just saying those things. That means understanding those things. That's why there's a paragraph of explanation there. So something like that, 100% needs to be understood. There's a difference of opinion of what Ramban Gamliel meant, that you didn't fulfill the mitzvah of telling the story, or that even at a time when we have all those foods to eat on the biblical level, we had the Paschal lamb and we had the matzah and the maror, which we have today too, that others hold that if you don't really know what they stand for and why you're eating them, that even though you eat them, that you haven't fulfilled your obligation. So key to understand that. But you can read the Haggadah in English, and you can take turns reading the Haggadah as well. If you have a good Haggadah, it will give you directions of when matzah should be covered, only once we remove the Seder plate. It tells every Haggadah is going to tell us when we pour the next cup of wine. So look for those small directions in the Haggadah. But there are times that we cover the matzahs, and there are times that we uncover the matzahs. Most of the time, the matzahs are uncovered. Why? Because it's part of telling the story of the Exodus. Because the matzahs have a strong component of reminding us about slavery. It's not the only component. If we have time, we'll come to that. So when we're speaking about the hardships of the Exodus, the matzahs are uncovered. When we sing exalted praise to Hashem, we cover up the matzahs and we hold the cup of wine. So those are the keys, and you can look for the directions in the Haggadah. Now, I would venture to say that I heard a tremendous Talmid Chacham actually on a conference call last week, who he has a phenomenal memory, most likely a photographic memory. And that Talmid Chacham said he doesn't know the Haggadah by heart. It was like eye-opening for me. But I think one part of the Haggadah that many of us might know by heart is the Manishtana, whether we know it in Hebrew, Yiddish, English, or whatever other language we may have learned it originally or subsequently. But it's a little bit strange because, why do we only ask 4 questions? Why don't we ask how come the Seder plate, was removed? Why don't we ask why we have 4 cups of wine, or at least 2? Because the Manishtana is asked after we poured the second cup of wine. So why shouldn't there be a question? Why do we have a second cup of wine? Or why aren't we eating? Normally, after Kiddush, we eat. The basic Ashkenazic and Sephardic practice is we make Netilat Yadayim, and then we eat. Many German Jews have the custom of washing, then making Kiddush and eating. But something's not normal. When we're not getting into the food. That's why my 4-year-old daughter asked the question, how his kidney, he's taking the Seder plate away, he's taking food away. We haven't even eaten anything, he's taking food away. So, so why don't we ask different questions? And the other thing, the Yabab Ben El asked, if you look at these questions, the matzah now, you see, I made the reference before, is that matzah has a double meaning. What's not so obvious, but the Haggadah tells us. The Haggadah in Halach Ma'anya, Ha means this, Lachma is lechem, is bread, or matzah. So we start telling in the Haggadah, we say that this is the bread of affliction. Halach Ma'anya, Anya, from ani, from poor. This is the bread, or from torture. This is the bread of affliction that our forefathers ate in Mitzrayim. Wait a second. If I would ask the normal, person, why do we eat matzah? The normal answer is going to be, as Ramban Gamliel says later on, that we were in a rush to get out of Mitzrayim and we didn't allow the dough to rise. So we turned into default. We created matzahs. But here, Halach Ma'anya says we ate matzah in Egypt. And that's because the phenomenon of matzah was not created by the Jews. Kosher, the Pesach matzah, was created by the Jews. But matzah, meaning bread and water, and especially flat bread, you know what? Anybody have a box of matzah from last year or earlier? Matzah lasts a very long time without spoiling. Probably maybe it's next to salt. I don't know. But it lasts a very long time. And, you can eat a little bit and it fills you up, and it's not as expensive. I'm not talking about the hand shmur matzah today. We pay a lot for per pound, but generally speaking, matzah, you can make a meal out of matzah and it's not so expensive. And the Egyptians knew these things. So it was cheap to feed their slaves matzah. So on the one hand, we have the matzah of affliction. That's the beginning of the Haggadah. The matzah at the beginning of the Haggadah is matzah of affliction. And so that's the first question, has to do with matzah of affliction. The second question is about maror, that we have this obligation to eat the bitter herb. All other nights we can eat any vegetables that we want. And tonight we have to eat at least the maror. So the Abba points out those two questions are asking questions that are telling us that this night is a night to remember affliction and very hard times. But the other two, when we talk about dipping food, that's normally a luxury of dipping into a nice olive oil or something like that, or into other condiments. That's something that free people with money would used to do historically. So that's a symbol of our freedom. And reclining, that's again aristocracy reclined on chaises. They would eat their whole meals that way every day. So the Abarbanel says we have a contradiction in the Manishtana, and that's what's being asked. On the one hand, we're doing things to remind us of our agony, of our slavery, and on the other hand, we're doing things to remind us of our freedom. Why are we doing something like that? Why do we have these contradictory messages? And in fact, you will see in some Haggadahs that there is only one question really that has like 4 components to it. Why is this night different than all other nights? That's really the question. Because the question is, why on this night do we do things that are contradictory? And that's how Avadim Hayinu, the paragraph that we were slaves unto Pharaoh, that's why it's the answer. Because the Avadim Hayinu, which is the answer to the Manishtana, doesn't say anything about eating matzahs. It doesn't say anything about the maror, about the dipping, or about the reclining, or about the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, which was part of having roasted offering, which is part of the original questions when Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, was functioning. We don't have that. There's no answers in that paragraph because that's not the question. The Abarbanel points out the question is, why do we do something of contradictions? And the answer is because this night was a night of contradictions. We went into that night still slaves, not working as hard, granted, but we were still technically slaves of Pharaoh, and we didn't have permission of Pharaoh to be able to leave the country. But during that night, that changed. And that's what we focus on in the Manishtana. We have the liberty of going a little bit past 11 o'clock. Could I just, hear, is there interest in staying past 11 o'clock?
12 o'clock.
Not that late, but let me just go through
12
some.
o'clock. 12 o'clock, not 11. Past
Past
12.
12.
Oh, I see. Oh, right. We started at 11 o'clock. Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Again, I'm just going to, within item. Item 12 is the Manishtana. So again, there are some notes about covering the matzahs, lifting the cup of wine to say V'hi Sha'amda. That's one of the great praises of Hashem. V'hi Sha'amda, that we raise our cup, for that. You'll follow the directions, Otherwise, when we say the Ramban Gamliel, we say Pesach, we don't point to anything, even though the shank bone on the table is to remind us of the Korban Pesach. But we want to be cognizant that we don't have the Korban Pesach. We don't point to it. When we talk about the matzah and
Excuse me.
what's that?
There are a few people that have their microphones on.
And they should be muting them.
Yeah. Could you remind
Okay. If there is extraneous noise, mean anything other than you asking a question or making a comment, please mute your microphones. So So normally when we talk about the matzah, we we hold up the broken matzah. Now that's okay. Again, it's okay, but remember that that person who's holding it, that's his or her matzah. We don't want to have and not to be shared. And the same thing by the maror. We could just point to the maror unless unless we have each has our own maror. Let me just remind you, and I put this in. No, actually, it's set to go out in an email. One of the more popular questions that I've received this year. I don't know. I really not so much in previous years. But excuse me for a second.
I don't know what they have.
I received multiple times the question: can we use a jarred horseradish for the mitzvah Seder? The answer is a very specific no. Maror has to be raw, not cooked. According to halacha, if something is in the liquid for 24 hours longer, it's cooked. So that's horseradish by that definition is cooked. Even if it was raw, put into the jar, sitting in the liquid, makes it cooked.
I'm ordering.
I'm
not ordering them.
Can you please? I'm going to mute. I think everybody's. I don't think I have that capability anymore. Please mute your microphone if you have any noise or speaking going on where you are, because we're all hearing it. So if we're using romaine lettuce, which we have to, soak and check for bugs because it's notorious. I mean, if you can get romaine lettuce hearts, it's a lot better, less work. But if we're soaking it, I don't know that people ever soak it 24 hours. Think about doing that. But if you were to soak those leaves for 24 hours or more, they wouldn't be usable for the maror. So please, you can eat jarred maror, as part of your Seder meal, but it's not the fulfillment of the mitzvah of the maror. Chazal teaches that the wise person has eyes in his head. Don't we all have eyes in his head? It means that we look forward. We're thinking about the future. There's a mitzvah to eat the afikomen, and it's to eat it after we've eaten other food, but not to be so stuffed that we really can't eat the afikomen, and then especially we might take too little. So leave ourselves room. Don't overcook. My wife in 2 minutes, we nether. It's going to give you some insights into some quick preparations. But if you eat the quantity of matzah, which that's the second page of the OU handout, gives you a very graphic measurement of the preferred sizes for eating the matzah. If you eat the matzah and the maror and then the sandwich that we have to eat, it's already a pretty big meal. Not such a fancy meal per se, but it's already a pretty big meal. So don't overdo it with the cooking, and don't overdo it with the eating. Please, please, please. After we eat, after we bench and make a bracha on the third cup, and again, each time we drink from the cups, we should be drinking that while we're reclining. We're going to say the Hallel. We only say 2 paragraphs of the Hallel before we eat. And the bulk of the Hallel plus other praises afterwards. So I know that after the eating, and maybe sometimes even before the meal part is over, people are starting to zone out for one reason or another. But it is a major part of the Seder to be awake. And for after the 4th cup of wine, since we've already benched, the bracha achrona must be made on the wine. So at least one person around the table should drink the 3 ounces or more, so that they are required to say the bracha achrona and say it for others, or everybody could say their own as well. You could check the end of the handout for a couple of other items in terms of preparing for the Seder. I know somebody made the offer of giving out the Haggadahs, and that is great. I do have a small quantity of brand new Art Scroll Haggadahs that I bought $3 each. If you want, you can call me and let me know. We can make arrangements for them. So, again, not all of us are as prepared for Pesach as we want. We want to minimize our shopping. Thank you for joining with me. I'm going to ask my wife if she could share a way of making our Pesach preparations go easier. Barbara, unmute.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay. I just wanted to say that, we all make, Pesach is a lot of work, but we also make it harder than we have to make it. And like my husband said, eating the food, it really gives us that ingesting to really experience what it is. Like the matzah, we actually feel those different aspects of matzah, our freedom and when we were slaves. So, but the thing is with first of all, getting ready for Pesach, I typically do not turn over my entire kitchen at one time. I find that too hard because I'm still in the middle of eating my chametz and eating my, and getting my Pesach things ready. So typically what I do is I will get part of it ready at one time. And so I koshered my oven, which with a self-cleaning oven isn't that difficult. I koshered it according to my husband's specifications. And then I actually did put boiling water on the two adjoining countertops of the oven. But I used another counter that I hadn't koshered yet, which I don't even know if I'm going to kosher. I'm just going to cover it with covering. So sometimes that is like heavy plastic, or, like I have a heavy plastic tablecloth I might cover my island with, or sometimes it's towels that I cover with. Of course, it's cleaned off first, and then I cover it, and then that can be my work surface. And you really, especially since most of us are not going to be having company, and it's just going to be 1 or 2 or 3 people at your Seder, we're not like doing this to the hilt. So we can cover surfaces with a towel without endangering ourselves with putting hot boiling water on a countertop. So that's the first thing, is like we can try to simplify things. The other thing is we don't have to take out all our pots. We don't have to take out all our silverware. We could take out a few things, and we can use a lot of disposables. And I know a lot of people will be using disposables, so I don't have to tell you, but there is very pretty disposables, and I've gotten a lot of things online already, and I'm trying to stay out of the stores. I have a delivery service through Winn-Dixie called Shipt, S-H-I-P-T. When you go online and you order through Winn-Dixie, you're given the option of a delivery service, which is, they have a yearly membership, but there is a free trial. They bring it right to your door. And the other thing is Aroma is doing a curbside pickup. Probably some of the other stores are doing that also. I just happen to know about Aroma. Now, like you can take, say, the aluminum tin. Now, I have some of the larger tins. So say I make a roast, which typically would be like for a lot of company, but I'm not going to have that company. So I made the roast. When it cooled down, I cut it up. And I put it in, I didn't even have containers yet because I was doing this like before I went out to get some containers, which honestly I didn't even get because I didn't want to go out to get the containers. So I happened to have had the Ziploc bag. So after everything was cool, I put it in the Ziploc bag. I had sliced it up in little smaller portions. I put it in the Ziploc bag. And instead of making a big mess all over my freezer with all these Ziploc bags, I put it back into one of those cooking tins, and I have a few of them in there. So when I go, after it's frozen and I go to take it out, I can just take out one little Ziploc with my roast in it. Also, in terms of recipes, I have a fabulous cookbooks, which honestly I did not use, but I will show it to you. This is one, Eunice Kleiman, may she rest in peace. Those who knew her had promoted this. I think she was friendly with Naomi Nachman, who I actually met in Australia, who's from Australia, a lovely woman, did this beautiful, beautiful Pesach cookbook. I don't know, might be a little late to get it now, but in the future, it's something to keep in mind. If anybody wants one of these recipes, I can take a picture of it and send it to you. This is a pretty one, kale, apple, and sausage soup which I'm not making, zucchini stuffed chicken, which I did not make. Okay, beautiful, beautiful, fancy recipes that you really could do any time of the year. But what I did to make it simple, when I made chicken, and I had Italian dressing, kosher for Passover, Italian dressing. All I did was I opened my chicken up, I put it in my disposable tin, I poured some Italian dressing on it, I poured some sherry wine sauce for cooking, I put a few vegetables in there, done, okay? So like, I don't have to go, first of all, those of you who know me, I have like the artist brain. I like doing something like a Seder is very nice because it's all laid out very orderly, just like in the name Seder, an order. But that's not how my brain works. So I am like the Shitterine, for those of you who know Yiddish, I don't. But for those of you who know it, know that that means like you can put in this and you can put in that and it'll all be wonderful in the end. You put a little bit of sweet in, you put a little bit of sour in, done. So that's how I cook. So I made sweet carrots. I cut up, now I happen to have a Cuisinart for Pesach. Of course, I have one for regular and I have one for Pesach. I'm not telling you to go out and buy it because you could do the same thing for the 2 people at your Seder with a knife. But I was like cooking in advance. I just decided like, this is my time to fill up my freezer with cooked things, but you don't have to do that. And I cooked up these carrots that I cut up in my food processor and sweet potatoes. And I put some cinnamon in it and honey. You could put orange juice in it if you have, a little bit of salt, done. All right, so, and I also, typically I would boil that. But because I didn't have my top koshered yet, and I'm trying to keep everything simple, like I said, in the oven with my chicken, with my roast, all done at the same time. And I just, I covered it up tight. I made sure there was a lot of liquid in it. I cooked it for longer than I typically would. And that eventually gets softer. And like I said, I used the food processor so the carrots were cut pretty thinly. Did the same thing with apples. I took a bunch of apples. I cut them. Now, for those of you who are Chabad, you want to make sure you peel them. I'm not Chabad. So, and I'm not having my Chabad family this year. So I did not peel them, honestly. Oops, I just told that. And I put a little bit of cinnamon, again with the cinnamon, and there were apples in it and nuts in it. But on that, I made it more like an apple crisp, and I put a mixture of oil and brown sugar and cinnamon and some matzah meal in that. I mixed that all up. Now, if you have the margarine, which because I didn't want to go to the supermarket, I did not have the margarine. So I used oils. Recommend the margarine, will taste better. That you crinkle it up on top. You throw that in the oven, all covered up nicely so that the apples get done nicely. Then you could take off the aluminum foil and let that get a little drier, and you've got your apple. It depends how, if the top gets crispy, it's an apple crisp. If it's a little soggier, it's an apple crispless, but whatever. Oh, a little bit of lemon on top of that is also very nice. And then, you know, there's other recipes. I'm sure everybody knows different recipes. I was thinking this morning about a recipe I used to do years ago with apricot jam and either Thousand Island dressing or French dressing. I'm sure like some of you cooks like Rabbi Green is probably shaking his head. He remembers that one. But anyway, I'm kidding. So you just mix up again, like dressings. There are prepared dressings. We don't have to go crazy trying to have a million spices and everything. It's for 1 week. We don't need a lot of stuff. And like my husband said, we're not going to have the roast at the Seder because the only roast would be the roasted either shank bone or chicken neck or some kind of bone that you're going to roast, and the roasted egg. Those are going to be the roast at the table, and everything else should have gravy in it. So even if like you're putting something like in a bake, and it's more like a meat type of thing, you want to make sure you have enough gravy in it. Gravy can be from wine, and it can be from your salad dressings, and it can be from a little extra water that you would put in it. And so, you know, and so there you go with that. Now, I also made, to make it easy for me, I had pargiote and I had chicken breasts. Right? Typically people wouldn't do this, but like I said, my artistic brain like thinks a little bit out of the box. So I put the chicken breasts in with the pargiote, and I did like a Moroccan flavoring with cinnamon and wine and onions and a little brown sugar. And so yeah, so that's how I did that. So my main thing is, and everything I made, like any kind of roast and any chicken, whatever I did to make it easier for me, I peeled the potatoes, I peeled the carrot, I put in the onion, and so I have like a side dish already with that. And, you know, like I said, it's just a small group. We don't have to have it so overdone fancy, but like I said, I'm using it as an opportunity to be organized, you know, even in the weeks to come, that I'm making these bigger things and then I'm breaking it down into smaller packages. Another thing I made was meatballs. Typically when I put the meatballs together, I'll put some egg in and mozzarella in, but I didn't have the opportunity to do that this year because I didn't have those items available to me. So I just made the meatballs fast. I put in tomato sauce and cranberry sauce. And if you have a can of pineapple, it's also very yummy in that. I put a little balsamic vinegar to give it that sweet and sour flavor, or you could use lemon juice. And some honey and wine, and everything makes everything taste delicious, of course. And honey is also one of my go-to things that I always add in everything. But, you know, the main thing to keep in mind is that we can be like so simple, and we don't have to like overdo it with the cooking and overdo it with the recipes. Again, if anybody wants me to copy a few of these recipes from Naomi Nachman, because it is late to get that book, but I know a lot of us had that book. But I am really, really not recommending that you use complicated recipes for much of our cooking, because you know, we're all in a little bit of a stressful time, and although sometimes cooking gets your mind off of that, so that would be a good thing. But in terms of like having all those, you know, measuring cups and having all of the things that you need to really make a major meal, we don't have to go to, and some of us don't even have that Pesach box or Pesach cabinet here. So we, you know, and we were trying to avoid the stores. So we can make do with what we have a lot, like with the disposable things, like I said, disposable utensils even. And that's the story. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Barbara. That was great. I'm almost tempted to try some of that myself. I did take notes, but
You will be trying it, and not just trying it, you're going to have to eat it.
That'd be my pleasure. Yeah, I see one question that was posted was whether or not you could add ice to your Kiddush cup. You know, a little bit of ice you can. Yes, you can add to your Kiddush cup. Okay, thank you all for joining. If we can be helpful to you in other ways, let us know. This may be an unusual Pesach, but let's find ways of making it really great under some unusual circumstances. We are a very, very resilient people, and we look forward to a Chag Kosher v'Sameach. Be well.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you both.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You're
You
welcome.
are welcome.
Very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Barbara and Rabbi.
Kol Tuv to
Thank
everybody.
you for joining us.
I'm trying to get my
We'll talk
video
later
on.
about recipe show.
Start video. There I am. Thank you, Barbara and Rabbi. Take
Thank
care.
you.
I'm so happy to see you, Cheryl.
Yeah, same here.
We had at least one professional chef on.
Uh-oh. Who's
In
that?
addition-
Who's that?
My wife.
Oh, me?
In addition,
Barbara, for sure.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Bye. How do I turn it off?
You had to say that.
Bye, Barbara. I don't know how to do this.
It's okay. You can give the next one, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Nobody's scheduled